First of all, thank you everyone for joining today's first session of a three-part webinar series. Today's topic is all about how to create a hashtag winning resume. This presentation is a partnership with Iowa Works and Kirkwood Community College. Our presenters today are from the Skills to Employment team, who work with several grant programs to help job seekers gain new skills to help employers fill their workforce needs. Now, before we move forward, let's help our audience navigate this total new situation that they might be in. So you can wiggle your mouse around to find the chat pod, and if throughout the presentation you have any questions, please do not hesitate to use the chat pod and submit your questions, and we'll be sure to get to those throughout the session and at the end. So let me ask you this question. When you hear the phrase, create a resume, what comes to mind? Either you're stumped, or you're giving us a big sigh like, Norma Jean, I don't want to create a resume. It's just so annoying and so frustrating. Don't you worry. We will be asking all kinds of questions throughout the session today, and we're going to try and make this process for building a hashtag winning resume fantastic. So it is actually our hope to address your questions with strategic answers throughout this webinar. As such, our itinerary for today will be sharing an introduction of our speakers, providing an overview of our topic, which is how to build a winning resume, and some key tips and tricks, along with some time at the end for discussion and questions and answers. Oh Wonderful. My gosh, look at these two beautiful people. Who are they? Well, first, Selenia.
Allow me to introduce you to Norma Havlick-Smith. Norma has been in the world of student support and academics since 2003. Norma's portfolio includes being an academic advisor, dean of students, director of student services, placement coordinator in the staffing industry, and currently works as workforce career consultant with Kirkwood Community and partners with Iowa Works. Norma has a bachelor's and master's degree in communication. She also is a distinguished Toastmaster, certified program planner, and certified cause facilitator. Norma's related experience is that she has 15 years of coaching job seekers on building their resumes, reviewing their resumes, editing resumes, and working with those seeking entry-level career through the lines of top-level executives in business and healthcare. Norma likes to call herself a true resume nerd.
Why, thank you, Selenia, for that wonderful introduction. So, on the other hand, Selenia Carew is an extraordinarily accomplished and vested community member. Mrs. Carew considers herself a portfolio of accomplished community resources with a professional philosophy to identify and maximize every networking opportunity as an opportunity for collaboration. Selenia received her Bachelor's of Science in Business Finance and a minor in biology from Iowa State University in the spring of 2004. Go Cyclones. She also speaks 5 languages: Mende, Tamini, Creole, French, and English. Selenia's previous work experiences with 6th Judicial District as an offender employment specialist, Rockwell Collins in international accounting, 4 Oaks with the Paths and Empower program coordinator, and a business owner of several franchise stores, including Boost Mobile and U-Haul. Selenia will attain her Master in Marketing Communications Management at the University of Dubuque in summer 2022. Good luck. Now, Mrs. Carew has 9 years facilitating resumes, job searching, and interviewing workshops. Selenia is a person of influence within the workforce professional network and whose opinion is highly sought after and whose judgment is well respected and trusted. Today, Selenia offers her expertise as a workforce career consultant of Iowa Works and Kirkwood Community College. So let us discuss the subject matter of building the winning resumes. Expect to be empowered with techniques to launch your resume to the top of the files. So let's get started. As we explained, it is our purpose to save you time in resume development and that process. We find that the frustration starts when we have to create a resume on the fly. And then we waste so much time digging for the information that we need. Let us help you reduce those frustrations by taking the time to prepare. And I'm a huge supporter of the phrase, proper planning prevents poor performance. In this case, performance just means how much time you will have to spend creating your resume. Most of us spend a good chunk of time getting our work history in order. The critical information you want to have includes the names of your employers, job titles you have held, start dates, end dates, job duties, and successes you had. We will tackle how to actually write the job description in a little bit. And the second focus of developing your resume is your education. You will want to know the names and places of where you attended school, when you attended, when you completed or stopped attending, and what credentials you may have earned. Once you have your work history in order and education ready, it will also be time to brainstorm your employability skills. These are vitally important because they will be at the top part of your resume, which will capture the hiring manager's attention and persuade them to continue reading through your resume. We'll also tackle your skill highlights in just a few moments.
As Norma mentioned, let us highlight your skills and qualifications. You may wonder where to find the information to build your resume. Let's start with your work history. You can find a lot of this information by calling your former employers, checking old resumes, going back to your W-2s in your tax records, looking on companies' websites for those job descriptions, and you may also want to dig through your email to find those email communications when you have been offered those jobs. If you need to find your education information, you may need to contact the registrar at your high school or college. You can also call the certifying agency for certifications or licenses you had received. Some additional resources to check are your old boxes of files. Even contact your former employers who may have copies of these certificates. If you are struggling to identify what your key attributes or skills are, you may wish to ask your peers. Use Google, brainstorm, reach out to friends, family, and coworkers through Facebook messengers or other medias to have them give you feedback on your positive skills. You will also want to do this when you are in a good mood. Otherwise, you may not be in a positive headspace.
Sheesh. Oh my goodness. Selenia, you didn't tell me I had to bring a shovel to this presentation to dig through all of that information. I mean, goodness gracious. However, here's a real world scenario. So I was working with this one client and we were working on building his resume and we had it all set. And most of us probably recognize that we use Microsoft Word to create the file. Anyone agree with me? Microsoft Word, yeah, okay. Well, when we started to help this customer apply for a job with his resume in Microsoft Word, we found out that there was a big hurdle that we had to accomplish. We found out that Microsoft Word was not the file type that he needed. Instead, he needed to create a plain text file. What? A plain text file? Geez Louise. Okay, so our advice in this situation is that when you're creating your resume, have 3 different versions of your resume, file types, okay? 3 file types. And that's because this is going to help prevent that time loss again. So you want a Microsoft Word version, which Microsoft allows you to stylize it, and most people in company databases will recognize the Microsoft Word file. But it's also to create a PDF version, which will freeze your content and formatting. And when you upload it to the database, nothing changes about the formatting. It stays just as it is. And then the .txt or the plain text file is where there's no specialized formatting. And there are some databases out there when you upload your resume that it will want a .txt file. And again, this is to help you in the advance part of this process of planning for that when you might need it.
That was an excellent point about having 3 versions of your resume. Now that you have gathered all the details for your resume and you are about to create it, you will need to make sure you tailor it for the specific job you're applying to. You'll want to use language from the job leads. You are encouraged to use at least 5 to 10 specific industry words that are listed on the job leads within your resume. The reason you do this is because there are filtering mechanisms in the job lead database that screen for keywords in your resume. If you do not have enough word match, then your resume may not be moved forward to the next step. You also want to make sure that you place your relevant and related experiences, education, and certification to the first page of your resume. This way, the resume viewer wouldn't have to view through your whole list of information just to capture your expertise, your experience, and the offerings that you have for that organization.
Here is an example of a job lead that we pulled from the internet. We underlined some of the skills or traits that would be important to match to your resume. Once you have identified the traits from the job lead itself, you then want to incorporate those specific words onto your resume. But you want to make sure that you actually have those traits or skills. And we'll talk about that in more depth later on. But oh boy, here comes the great debates.
Number of pages debate. Here's the advice we have for you. If you have less than 10 years of work history, then 1-page resume is acceptable. If you have more than 10 years of work history, then 2-page resume is acceptable. If you're entering the academia world, then you may need to submit a CV or a curriculum writer, which is typically longer than 2 pages. This is always a very subjective topic, and you may hear a wide range of opinions. The best way to approach your resume is to ensure your relevance, experience, education, and license are listed on the first page. Make sure that you do not leave out critical information about your work history, education, or skills.
Thank you, Selenia. It is really important not to leave out those critical details. Here you actually have an example of a typical resume. You have your name and contact information at the very top. Then you have your skill highlights, or on this example, it says professional summary. The third section of your resume would be your work history or your education. Critical thing to note, you list whichever one you have most recently done. So if you just got out of some new education, that would be listed, and then the next item would follow that. Now, the fourth section of your resume is typically your education. The fifth section is about your certifications and licenses. And then if you have room, the sixth section would be for your organizational affiliations. And then, again, if you have room, it would be about your publications or any written materials, and you would also list those in a section called publications.
It's time to talk about our red flags. In order to avoid the pitfalls of red flags and avoid someone from putting your resume to the bottom of the pile, these are some important items to ensure you address within your resume. Tip 1, if you are not working, you can avoid gaps in your resume by filling your time with free professional development activities. Some examples might include attending webinars like this, seminars, or reading industry-related books. 2, make sure that you use the right words and phrases. Use correct tenses, periods, commas, and other punctuations correctly. 3, make sure to spell all the words correctly. Use the program Grammarly, it's amazing. And also have at least 2 other professionals look over your resume. In my experience, it's always good to have 2 or 3 pairs of eyes looking through your resume. 4th, be sure that your resume is easy to read by using bullets, indentations, and periods or columns consistently through your document. 5th, make sure the content of your resume is tailored to the job. And finally, list all relevant skills and experiences on the first page. Make sure you identify the results and achievements within each of your job descriptions. We'll tackle that in more details in a little bit.
Goodness gracious, all those red flags to avoid, but I guess it's just to help us to get our resume to the top of the pile. Thank you, Selenia. It looks like we might have a question in the chat pod. Is there a question that we can address?
Yes, Nama. This was from Ms. Jennifer McLean, and she says, hi, just wondering if we'll be able to view the Zoom recording later. Yes, this is recorded and it will be sent to you on completion.
Very good. Thank you, Selenia. All right, so when it comes to formatting your resume, the first thing that a resume reviewer should actually see is your first and last name. These should be in either bold or in all capital letters at the top of your resume. Below that would be your contact information. And then when it comes to your email address, be sure that it is an email address that is professional. So let me ask our audience, what might be some email addresses that you would not put on your resume? Anyone want to give us an example of a non-professional email address?
I'll take a jab at it, Norma. hotmama@yahoo.com.
That's a good one. Or daddoggy21@gmail.com. Or grandma loves her grandchildren at AOL.com. So the best thing to do when it comes to creating a professional resume and your actual email address is to create an email with your first and last name and then using the email provider. So mine might be norma.havlicksmith@gmail.com. You know, that's a very simple but professional email address. And again, it's your first and last name at the email you provide.
Norma, that was a perfect example of a professional email address. As we mentioned earlier, one of the sections of your resume will be your professional summary with your skill highlights. This section will be located below your name and contact information. This section can really entice the reader to continue to read through the rest of your resume. As you can see on the slide, the resume has 3 bulleted items for their skills highlights. Let's take notice at the words that they have chosen. visual language such as visionary, creative, certified, results-driven, and exceptional. This gives the reader a more concrete idea of your capabilities.
Really good point, Selenia, as far as those visual words to capture the reader's attention. Very good point. So now that you have completed your professional summary, it's time to tackle your work history section. And the typical order of a job description will be like the example that you see on the slide. You first list your job title, and then the name of the employer, the city, and the state. And then to the far right, you start with your starting month and year, and then you put the ending month and year. If the job is still current, you would use the word current instead of an end date. And then below that is your area for your job descriptions. Now, in order to avoid a red flag, make sure you always have the month and year included for your start and end dates. You never just want to use a year-to-year approach. And we'll tackle the actual job description in just a few moments.
Remember that you still want to show all of your work history. So split your work history into two sections on your resume. You have your related work history, and then you have your other work history. By creating two separate sections, you are identifying the relevant information to the hiring manager, but you are also accounting for any gaps in your work history. This approach also shows that you are employable and markets your other skills that makes you a great employee.
So very true about the separate sections. I know it can be a little awkward, but it really does help to keep your focus on the relevant information. And that's a key word throughout this entire presentation is relevancy. So now let's talk about the actual writing of a job description. Some people can fear this process, but don't fear it. Writing a job description can be tough in this new world because nowadays employers, they don't just want to know what you did, but they want to know how well you did it and what the results were. So let us ask, why is it so important that employers want to know those three things? Why are they asking for that information? And feel free to use the chat pod if you would like to answer. And did we get any fun submissions in our chat pod?
No, Norma, we did not get any submission in our chat pod.
No worries, we have a shy bunch. That's not a problem. So to give those hiring managers what they're looking for, here's what you do when it comes to writing your job description. Number one, you first start with an adverb like successfully, skillfully, efficiently, effectively, timely, routinely, or any other positive adverb. Then select a verb, which is basically just an action word like achieved, organized, produced, created, stocked, cleaned, or anything else, any other action word that you did on the job that relates to exactly what you did on the job. The third part of the job description is writing out the actual duty itself or the award. The final part of the sentence is the result, okay? So you have those components of the job description. And as you can see on the slide, here are a couple of examples. Efficiently stocked and organized Hy-Vee store shelves to achieve a 96% satisfaction rate of customers in 2019. Another example, skillfully unloaded boxes from inventory to ensure no products were damaged and achieved an 85% no broken inventory assessment in May 2017. Now notice we captured all 4 of those components.
So another important section of your resume is your education. I'm going to welcome audience participation. So I'll ask the audience this question. Why should you not list your high school graduation date on your resume? Why should you not list your high school graduation date on your resume? Oh, I love it. So our 2 responses. One was, don't want to give your age away. That's true. The other one is fear of being targeted for your age. Yes, perfect responses. We want to avoid any potential judgments of our age. In US culture, the typical graduation age is 17 or 18. So if you list your high school graduation date, then that may leave an opportunity for someone to judge you. And instead of looking at your knowledge, skills, and abilities. And as such, we remove the temptation by not listing the high school graduation date, but instead use the word completed or graduated for the educational achievement. Second question for the audience, give me an example when you should use or list your education achievement graduation date. I'll state that question again. Give me an example when you should list your educational achievement date. All right, I didn't see any comment on this one, so let me fill that in. We should only list our educational achievement graduation date when we are listing any education or credential after high school, like your college, bachelor's degree, or certifications or credentials that you might have attained. At that time, it is appropriate for you to list your graduation date.
I know it's hard for us to think that we might be judged for our age, or we might actually start thinking about it. And so again, as Selenia mentioned, we just want to remove that temptation and really focus on the dates after high school education. So let's talk about the next section of our resumes, which are the licenses and certifications. And just to let everyone know, we're almost done building a hashtag winning resume. So the next element is where you have your licenses and educations. And some examples of these would be your Class A or Class B license or any other specialized driver's license. You can also list your medical, dental, health, operational, or any other safety licenses or licenses or certifications that you have had. You can also list any Microsoft or computer training that you've received that says license or certification. Anything that also has to deal with web design or graphic design. And as we mentioned, just to let you know that this list is not all inclusive. So if there are any other certifications or licenses that you do have, the easiest thing to do is look at the actual credential that you have and look for the word license or certification. And that will definitely give you an idea of whether it should go on your resume or should not. Now, the final bit in this, as we have mentioned throughout this presentation, is relevancy. If that certification or license is relevant to the job that you are applying for, then list it. If not, leave it off especially if you don't have room. And space is definitely critical for a resume too.
Norma, you were so right. The next section of your resume, and only if applicable and relevant, is the organizations and affiliations section. In the first column are some examples of the groups that you might belong to. Which organizations would you list on the resume? The answer, only the ones that are relevant on the job you're applying to, which means that if you belong to all of this listed on the slide, and if all of them are relevant to the job you're applying to, then you will list all of them on your resume. When you are listing them on your resume, make sure you list the name of the organization, your role or duty or title, how long you have been a member, and if your membership is still active.
Thank you, Selenia. Appreciate that. Yes, very important information regarding whether or not we should list it or not. Almost like selling a house, whether you should list it or not. So another part of your resume is organizations and affiliations that we've talked about. And now we're on to awards and honors. And this is really a good part of your resume because it celebrates things that you have done and that would be also a highlight for an employer. So when it comes to awards and honors, you want to make sure that, again, if you have space on your resume, definitely list them. And then you want to follow these simple guidelines. Number one, list the most recent one first, okay? Make sure that you list the official name of the award, the issuing organization, and the date of the award. For example, Dean's List, comma, Kirkwood Community College, comma, May 2020.
All right, Norma, I see a question in the chat box. So I'll pose that question to you. Are you ready, Norma? What if undergrad and grad degrees are many years apart? Is that a red flag?
As a matter of fact, it's not. It shows to the employer that you are continuing to grow and develop in your education and in your growth. So some of us have completed our education back to back. That's good. And some of us have completed one educational level. We might have worked some. We might have done maybe some professional development, but not necessarily full-time education. And that's okay. And then some of us might have waited a little while to complete maybe an associate's degree. And then maybe 6, maybe 10 years later, we went back and completed a bachelor's degree. And that's perfectly fine too. But that shows that you are still interested in growing and developing in your industry. So you definitely want to list both of those on your credentials, on your resume. But again, it's not a red flag, not at all.
I completely agree with you, Norma. Norma, we will be remiss if we did not talk about whether you should or should not list your references on your resume. Most of us will say, do not list your references on your resume. This should be listed on a separate document. The reason for this is that references have nothing to do with your knowledge, skills, and abilities, so don't list it on your resume. It also prevents employers from reaching out to your references without asking you first. This also tells you where the employer is at their interviewing and hiring process. Typically, references are checked when you are closer to being offered a position. However, the best way to address your references on your resume is to state at the bottom of your resume, references will be provided upon request. And finally, if you want to know what information to include on your reference page, then provide 3 to 5 references, The more professional references you have, the better. You will need to list the name, first and last, and their job title and company, and along with the amount of time you have known them. And lastly, your relationship with them, professional or personal.
Whew. Oh my gosh, we got done. However, you start looking at your resume and you start thinking, I need more education, or I need more training, or I need something else to make me more marketable in my industry. Not a problem. Guess what? So you created your resume and you start thinking, how can I build more skills? Don't stress, okay? At Iowa Works, and partnership with Kirkwood Community College, eligible customers can get financial assistance with completing their high school education, obtaining English as a second language skill or additional adult education services, adding continuing education units, obtaining a diploma, going back for a 1-year or a 2-year associate's degree, or even helping you complete a bachelor's degree, all while providing support services too. This is all in part to our K-PACE, gap tuition assistance, and our workforce innovation and opportunity grants. So, does anyone know what Iowa Works is? If you guess that Iowa Works is a consortium of agencies, you're correct. And Iowa Works is an organization that represents Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services, Iowa Workforce Development, Kirkwood Community College as the adult education provider, and it also has Promise Jobs. So if you were to go out to Eastdale Plaza or out to Lindale Mall and you saw our offices, you would actually run into all 4 of those partner organizations under the Iowa Works umbrella. And basically, Iowa Works is a one-stop shop, and it's partnered again with Iowa Voc Rehab, Iowa Workforce Development, Promise Jobs, and Kirkwood Community College in our region. And we are embedded in our community to help those who are ages 16 to 24 who are in school or out of school. We also work with those who are low-income adults or those receiving SNAP benefits, as well as those who are underemployed. We also partner with folks who have lost their jobs due to no fault of their own or are dislocated. And you also have several ways to reach out to us to start the process of adding those additional skills. So as you can see here on the slide, you can contact us through the link at the top. You can email us, you can give us a call. And if you want to see a menu of our services just to get started, you can also go to our kirkwood.edu website to explore services, and especially skills to employment. That's the name of our department.
Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. We made it through creating your resume. Whew. Who knew we would have done it? We did. We know you could do it. Now that you have been provided with the successful tips and tricks for creating a winning resume, let's open it up for some questions and answers. So please, feel free to use the chat box and pose your questions. Well, I would like to have some questions to ask the audience, since the audience doesn't have any questions for us. These questions will be related to the topic that was presented today and information that was shared with you. So,
Selenia, wait. Guess what? We have a
what?
question.
Yay! Okay. So, we have a question. If applying out of state, should you only include your email and phone number?
Selenia, would you like to tackle that question or do you want me?
Go for it, Norma.
So when it comes to applying for in-state jobs or out-of-state jobs, I've actually experienced that myself. And so the first thing to consider is that you don't want to mislead the employer, number one, but you do want to make sure that you have an answer ready for them when they ask you, when are you ready to start? Can you start right away? Because they can't ask you where you live. Okay, they can't ask you that and they shouldn't, but it may be a red flag if you leave that information off your resume regarding your residency, as far as, your city, state, and zip. So I've actually had success with both. And what I did, one was I tried my resume with just my email address, and I did get a couple of invites for interviews. So that was a positive. And then I also did a couple of resumes with my current address. And so I was living in Illinois and I was transitioning to Iowa, and I listed without my address on there, or I did it with and without, and I did get interviews with both. Okay, so you have possibilities to leave it off or to keep it on there, but you just want to make sure to be prepared to answer the question of why are you applying for the job, or they might ask you about your work history regarding what happened in the most previous job. And so that might come up if you leave that kind of information off. Selenia, would you like to tackle any other parts of that?
I think that you summed it up just perfectly. There is another question that we have, and I will welcome the challenge of answering that. The question is, it sounds like you are recommending that people put their graduation date from college and a master's program on their resume. But what if those degrees were obtained 30 years ago? That is a great question. I will say still include that on your resume because it shows your certification, your qualification, and that's the most important skill the employer is looking to employ within their agency. So please share that information.
I agree. It also shows that you have the ability for higher level learning. And so a bachelor's degree that's been earned 30 years ago, a master's degree that's been earned 30 years ago, it still shows that you have aptitude levels that are beyond high school. And that is also really critical for the employer to know. And yes, I know you're probably thinking, well, Norma Jean, if it's 30 years ago, they can consider how old I am. Yes, that's a possibility. I'm right there with you, but you still want to list it when it comes to higher level education. And these are wonderful.
And then there was a follow-up comment.
Love them.
The follow-up comment was, I was thinking it'll be better to not list the year the degree was obtained. I can also see that perspective of not listing the year, but just identifying that that degree was attained. I can see that perspective as well. Thank you for sharing your input, your feedback.
And here's where Selenia and I will also probably agree, is that resume reviewing and hiring managers are humans, okay? So we are all subjective. All of our eyes have different filters. My training, Selenia's training, when we look at a resume, we might actually start thinking very differently about what we see on that resume. So here's my advice to you. try it with and without a graduation date and see what happens. See if you get more responses with the graduation date and see if you get more hits without the graduation date. And that can also then give you an idea of what current employers are also looking for. So it might be different within industries, within hiring managers too. And so unfortunately, there is no right or wrong answer truly. And I'm gonna raise my hands to this. There's no right or wrong answers when it comes to developing a resume, because the advice that we give to you is really what we've experienced and what we look for as hiring managers. But Selenia and I are just 2 out of thousands upon thousands of hiring managers, and you might experience other things. So I've tried different ways with my resume. When I was job searching, I tried it different ways. And that's really how you can also gauge what might work and what also might not work.
That was a very perfect way of summing it up, Norma Jean. At this point, we want to thank our audience for attending today's webinar. As you all know, this is first of 3-part webinar series, which means we hope to see every one of you at our next session on how job searching is like grocery shopping, and will definitely provide flavor during that presentation. Norma and I wish you a productive and successful week. Norma, would you like to add something to that?
Just thank you all for attending and viewing this presentation and sharing this information to anyone else that you think would benefit.